Lantern in the marsh. The locals still whisper about the lantern light in Harker's Marsh. When I was a boy, my grandmother would warn me never to cross the marsh after sunset. The lantern will find you, she'd say, her voice a dry rasp like dead leaves. I thought it was just folklore, something to scare kids into staying close to home. But that was before the fall of 1993 when I returned to Black Hollow to bury her and found out what really lived in that fog. I'd been away for 10 years. The town was smaller than I remembered. Just a scatter of old clapboard houses hugging the edge of the woods, a dying general store, a diner with a flickering sign. The air smelled of rot and wet moss. My grandmother's house, tucked near the marsh's edge, hadn't changed. Her rocking chair still creaked in the wind, but she was gone, and the silence felt like something watching. The funeral was simple, sparsely attended. A few neighbors came, offered half-hearted condolences. Old Miss Croft pressed her hand to my arm and said, "She was a good woman, strong, but she shouldn't have gone out there, not alone." I didn't know what she meant until that night. Jet-lagged and numb, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the porch drinking her old rose-hip tea, watching the mist roll in from the marsh. The moon was a pale, blind eye behind the clouds. That's when I saw it, a faint golden light bobbing through the reeds. It wasn't a flashlight, it moved too smoothly, swaying in an odd, almost rhythmic pattern, like it was being carried by someone walking just out of sight. I stood. The hairs on my arms prickled. Curiosity pulled me to the edge of the property. The marsh began where her broken fence ended, dark water laced between cattails and twisted trees. The lantern glowed again. Closer this time. I stepped into the fog. The ground sucked at my boots, each step a grotesque squelch. The silence deepened. No frogs, no insects, just my breathing and the sound of the water shifting beneath the reeds. The lantern disappeared. I stopped. Then, a creak, like an old hinge. A shape emerged in the fog. At first, I thought it was a person, but it was too tall, its limbs too thin, like bundled reeds stretched unnaturally long. It held the lantern, but its hand, if it was a hand, was wrapped in stained, weathered cloth, as if bandaged centuries ago. It turned toward me. Its face was wrong. Not a face at all, but a gnarled piece of driftwood shaped vaguely like a skull, with hollow sockets that burned with cold light. I ran. The next morning, I told myself it had been a dream. Grief and lack of sleep, nothing more. But I couldn't shake the memory of that thing's gaze. It hadn't chased me, but I felt it watching as I fled back to the house. I called the sheriff. He humored me, took down a report, muttered something about trespassers. But I could see in his eyes he didn't believe me. Or worse, he knew. That afternoon, I visited the library. The dusty archives room hadn't been touched in years, but the librarian, a hunched man named Elbridge, remembered my grandmother. She did her research. Your gran, he said, knew more about the marsh than anyone alive. He showed me a stack of hand-typed pages and old clippings, all bound together in a leather folio labeled Willows and Wraiths, a history of Harker's Marsh. According to the records, the marsh had once been home to a Puritan settlement, Harker's Hollow, founded in 1673. The settlers disappeared less than 5 years later. No bodies were found, just empty cabins and one journal recovered from the half-submerged church. The journal spoke of a penitent spirit, a lantern bearer, doomed to walk the wetlands until it found someone willing to take its place. It warned of nights when the fog grew thick and the light could be seen drifting through the reeds. It ended with one final, desperate line. I saw the lantern. It saw me. Now I must carry it. I slammed the book shut. That night, I locked the doors and drew the curtains, but sleep didn't come. At 2:17 a.m., I woke to the sound of the porch boards creaking. Then came the light, brighter now, just beyond the window. I didn't move. I barely breathed. The light floated up to the glass. I saw a shadow stretch across the floor. Then, from behind the curtain, I heard it whisper, "You saw me." I left the next morning. I packed my bags and drove until the marsh disappeared in the rearview mirror. I didn't stop, didn't look back, but you can't run from something that's already inside you. I started seeing it in cities, reflections in puddles, a flicker of gold between buildings. Once I woke to find my apartment full of fog and a lantern burning softly in the corner. Until I blinked, and it was gone. I thought I was losing my mind, until I went back to clean out my grandmother's attic. Among her belongings was an envelope addressed to me. Inside was a note. If you see the lantern, never follow, never speak, and whatever you do, don't carry it. There was also a key. The key opened a drawer in her old writing desk. Inside was a lantern. Ancient, cold to the touch. The glass was fogged from the inside. The moment I touched it, I felt something shift, not in the room, in me. I started dreaming of the marsh, of its hunger. It doesn't want to be alone. It never did. I know that now. It's not a spirit, not in the way we understand. It's older, deeper, something elemental. It doesn't just haunt, it chooses. And it chose me. I'm writing this because I don't know how much longer I can resist. The light is growing stronger. Some nights, I see it burning in my eyes when I look in the mirror. Last week, a jogger went missing near the edge of Central Park. The news called it a tragedy. They found a trail of wet footprints leading into the woods. Nothing else. But I know what happened. I know what's coming. I've booked a train back to Black Hollow, back to the marsh. Maybe if I return the lantern, it'll release me. Maybe it just wants to go home. Or maybe it wants to trade. If you're reading this, if you've seen the light, then it's too late for you too. You looked, it saw, and now it waits. In the fog, in the water, with its empty hand stretched toward the dark. Don't follow it. Don't speak to it. And for the love of God, don't carry the lantern.